Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the fourth video in our series of March of the Machine Commander deck techs. My plan is to cover every legendary creature from the March of the Machine's main set, in no particular order, and if there's still interest at the end of all that, I'll do the extra legends from Mom Jumpstart, the special pre-release promos, maybe even the non-face legends from the March of the Machine Commander products. So if you have a request for a specific commander, or a way you'd like to see me build that deck, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today our commander is Omnath, Locus of all. Omnath finally gets his black pip from Phyrexian oil, and now the mean green bean is every flavor, including licorice? And because that's gross, I've picked out all the black jelly beans from my bag to make this deck. What does that mean? You'll see. But before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. So I like to build my deck around my commander. I want to be able to highlight what that card does and to showcase it somehow throughout the deck building, rather than just put something strong in the right colors in the command zone. So I will allocate 30 cards to what I call the game plan. This is generally how I do this. We don't have to stick to these numbers exactly, and in this deck, it's pretty chaotic. But in general, 30 cards for my game plan, and 30 more split about evenly between card advantage, like draw spells, acceleration, like ramp spells, and interaction, like removal spells. I will often include 1 or 2 wraths, sometimes fewer, sometimes more if it helps the game plan, and then 38 lands in order to make sure I hit my land drops. In a deck that's 5 color like this, you want to make sure that you have just the right kind of lands and the right mix of them, and plenty of acceleration to fix your mana. So that's how the template for my decks normally looks. So now let's talk about Omnath, our Locus of all. Omnath is a 5-mana 4/4 Phyrexian elemental in Wooburg colors, except the black pip is Phyrexian mana. Omnath has 2 abilities. The first is, if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes black instead. What that means is, if you don't spend your mana, normally at the end of steps and phases, that mana goes away. But with Omnath, instead of going away, it just turns black. And then you move to the next step and phase, and at the end of that, any unspent mana you have, including the black mana that remains in your pool, it turns black again. So black mana just becomes black again. It's like it sticks around. So you can't run out of mana, essentially, while Omnath is in play, because any mana you have available in your pool is just going to stay there. If your opponents remove Omnath, of course, that mana will go away at the end of the step or phase, but as long as Omnath is sticking around, you're just going to accumulate more and more black mana. Omnath's second ability says, at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card if it has 3 or more colored mana symbols in its mana cost. If you do, add 3 mana in any combination of its colors and put it into your hand. If you don't reveal it, put it into your hand. So you're putting the card into your hand either way. This is happening at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, so right after your draw step. So essentially, on your turn, you're going to draw 2 cards, one from your draw step and one from this trigger at the beginning of your pre-combat main. If you reveal that card, which is to say you can only do that if it has 3 or more colored mana symbols in its mana cost, then you also get to add mana, but either way you're putting it into your hand. But what's special to note about this is it says 3 or more colored mana symbols. It doesn't say 3 or more different colored mana symbols. So if you have a card that costs, blue, 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 then that counts. And what you do with this is you'll reveal it and add 3 mana in any combination of its colors. It doesn't necessarily say the colors that you're seeing there specifically. So for example, if you have a card that's 4 colors, that's, white, blue, red, green, you're going to get to add 3 mana. But those mana could all be green if you want to. It can be in any color combination of the colors that card happens to be. If it was, blue, red, 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 or let's just say blue, red, red, you could add triple blue if you wanted to, even though it's got only 3 pips, colored mana symbols, and 2 of them are red. You could add all blue if you feel like it. You don't have to stick to exactly what it says there. You just have to use the colors that it does possess, but not all of them necessarily. So all that to say, Omnath essentially says draw an extra card, maybe add some mana during your pre-combat main phase, and any mana you don't spend throughout your turn or your opponent's turns doesn't go away, it just becomes black. Also, Omnath is a 4/4. So this is what Omnath does for us. Because Omnath's black pip is Phyrexian mana, however, we don't have to spend black for it. We can just spend 2 life in place of it. That's how Phyrexian mana works. Which means we can cast Omnath for a white, a blue, a red, a green, and 2 life, rather than Wooburg, which means we can cast Omnath for 4 mana. We can power out our 5 mana commander on turn 4, as long as we're willing to pay 2 life. And in a commander game, we've got 40, so we might as well. I decided to lean into that. So what I built here is a 4-color deck for our 5-color commander. I mentioned not wanting licorice in our Jellybean bag. We have a few ways to produce black mana, like Command Tower and Fellwar Stone, but the plan is usually to spend life to just go fast. And we have sources of incidental life gain sprinkled throughout the deck to kind of balance that out if we really need to. So our game plan is to outvalue our opponents with Omnath's ramp for a slew of gold cards. Cards with 3 or more colors aren't always stronger, but they do tend to be more fun, and those are the ones I've tried to put into this deck. That includes a number of spells with X in their mana cost, because not only does Omnath give us colored mana to cast a spell every turn, we'll also have a pile of black mana sitting in our mana pool ready for us to sink into big effects. And because we have such a colorful deck, we have plenty of cards that synergize with playing multicolored cards. We also have a few interactive instants, quite a few of them in fact, because charms are a thing, which means if they're in our hand, we're going to want to hold up mana to use them on our opponent's turns. And whether or not we use that mana, we can always, our plan is always just to tap out on the end step of our opponent to our right, because that's happening right before our turn, and then all of our unspent mana will just become black and ready for us to spend it on our next turn. So, as always, the deck list for this deck is in this video's description, and the considering section on this Moxfield page has options for adjusting the deck's budget, power level, and focus. So check it out. So let's get into this. Our game plan, like I mentioned, is to play a bunch of spells that synergize with Omnath's abilities. So I have created a tag that's just Omnath. There are 44 cards in this tag because we have so much overlap in other sections. So let's just get started talking about all of these. We'll go through all of them and we'll get to our other spells and our other categories of spells, many of which are going to overlap with these. So as you can see, we have a few charms here, and we're going to start with Bant Charm. Bant Charm is Bant colors, green, white, blue, for an instant, and charms are always choose one of 3. Destroy an artifact, put target creature on the bottom of its owner's library, or counter target instant spell. Counter target instant spell is pretty narrow, but instant spells are very strong, and having this available to us on our turn as well is going to be able to help us stop our opponents from interacting with our things, especially Omnath, or interacting with Omnath on, a different turn, where we might have to, if we lost our Omnath, we would lose all the black mana in our pool. We can also use that with instant spells and with the other 2 modes, destroying an artifact or absolutely getting rid of a creature, just putting it on the bottom of its owner's library. That's so strong. All of these are useful politically. We can say, hey, I know your opponent, you're talking to one of your opponents, and we say, I know that other opponent is about to kill your commander with a path to exile. I can counter that, but what will you do for me? So we can counter that spell, or we can say, hey, opponent A is really popping off. I can get rid of their commander, even though their commander has indestructible, because we can put it on the bottom of their library. Will everyone leave me alone for the next turn or 2 if I do that? That kind of thing. Bant Charm, like all the charms, very strong, very flexible. Broker's Ascendancy also costs Bant mana, but it's an enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, You put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. We do have one planeswalker in this deck, but Broker's Ascendancy is one of our pump spells, and it's just, 3 mana to get a counter on everything every turn. That's pretty good value. Then we can combine the two for Broker's Charm. Also Bant mana. Choose one. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn and deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Or destroy an enchantment, or draw 2 cards. So between Bant Charm and Broker's Charm, we can destroy artifacts and enchantments. Broker's Charm is a removal spell, both to destroy that enchantment, but also to create a bite effect. Pump up the power of one of our creatures by 1 and have it bite something else, including a planeswalker. Or we can use it as a weirdly costed divination. So just, if we need more card draw, which as you will see, we don't need a lot of card draw because we have so much in this deck. But if we happen to want it, Broker's Charm is just great. Imagine revealing this during your pre-combat main phase off of Omnath's trigger and saying, oh, I'm going to add Bant mana and I'm going to cast this immediately and just divination. Actually, it's an instant speed divination, so it's a quick study. That's great. Cabaretti Charm, another charm, but this one for red, green, and white, says choose one. It deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker, and we definitely have a bit of a go-wide theme in this deck. Or creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn, or make 2 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. So if we need more creatures, we've got citizens. If we need to get bigger or get evasive, we can give all our creatures +1/+1 and trample. And if we just want to kill something, we've got that too. Charms are always good. We have several cards that work in the form of Diviner's Portent. There are some in the considering section at the bottom, like I mentioned. I chose Diviner's Portent because it seemed like a better use for this deck, but we have other cards that sort of do a similar thing in that they cost X and triple blue and draw us cards, like Blue Sun Zenith, that sort of deal. I chose Diviner's Portent for this reason. So the way it works is it's X and triple blue for an instant. We roll a d20 and add the number of cards on our hand to our roll. And if we roll a 15 or better, we will scry X and then draw X. And if we don't roll at least a 15, we just draw X. So just being able to reveal this off of Omnath, add triple blue to our mana pool, and then pay that triple blue and then any amount from mana sources we already have or any black mana we have floating around remaining in our pool from Omnath, just pump that in and draw a bunch of cards. That's really helpful. But remember, this is instant speed, so we might want to do this on a different turn, or it's still fine to do this during our pre-combat main after we've gotten the mana from Omnath, because Scry X, that just sets us up for future turns. We can set ourselves up and say, okay, on the next turn, I want to be able to reveal this card. So we'll put one card on top and then that card we chose below it, since we'll draw that first card and then, yeah. Actually, does that work? No, I'm making a huge mistake because of course you scry and then you draw. But yeah, we can get the card selection here and get the cards from that selection that we definitely want, because we're going to draw that same amount of cards. And if we scry some to the bottom, we'll get some more on top of it that may be better than the ones we put on the bottom. Diviner's Portent's great. Endless Detour, I really like this card. If you've watched my videos, you know I'm a Nuka Penna fan. So it's an instant for Bant mana that says the owner of target spell, non-land permanent, or card in the graveyard puts it on the top or bottom of their library. So the opponent does get to choose whether it's top or bottom, but this can hit non-land permanents, so anything on the battlefield that isn't a land. It can hit cards in graveyards, which means if someone's trying to reanimate a card, we can fizzle their reanimate effect and just have them put this into their library, top or bottom, so that they have to draw it again next turn. Maybe they have to find another way to get into their graveyard if they want to reanimate it. But even better, we can hit spells with this. So this gets around uncounterable. Someone casts a spell that's uncounterable, we hit it with Endless Detour, we're not countering it, we're just putting it back to their library. And then they either have to say goodbye to it essentially forever by putting it on the bottom, or wait until they can draw again, get that same card so that it feels like their tempo is down, not where they want it to be. So yeah, Endless Detour, I enjoy this card a lot. Much like Diviner's Portent, like I mentioned, we have a couple of effects that are X and triple blue to draw cards. Gadwick the Wizened is one of those, from Throne of Eldraine, my favorite set. So for X and triple blue, Gadwick is a 3/3 human wizard that when he enters, we draw X cards, but also whenever we cast a blue spell, of which every spell we've looked at so far other than Cabaretti Charm is blue, we tap a non-land permanent an opponent controls. Generally, that's going to be a creature. If we want to make it so that our opponents can't block with something, we might want to tap down a big artifact that they might otherwise activate to either force them to activate it then or to turn it off some other way. Yeah. Again, Gadwick's ability is at instant speed, and we have several blue instants. So we can activate one of these, or cast one of these rather, during an opponent's turn politically to use Gadwick's trigger and tap down something that an opponent might want us to in exchange for something that they can give us, like leaving us alone or giving us a beneficial spell, perhaps. Who knows? But let's get out of the blue and talk about the green. X, green, green, green for Genesis Wave, which is a sorcery. Reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put any number of permanents with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then, put all cards revealed this way that weren't put onto the battlefield into your graveyard. So if we can Genesis Wave for X equals 3 at least, we're going to hit most of the cards in our deck. Let's take a look at the mana curve of our deck. It's ridiculous. So we have plenty of permanents that are higher than that. So if we were to do, let's say, X equals 5, we're going to hit quite a few different things. But 21 of our permanents are mana value 3. So X equals 3, we're going to look at the top 3 cards and be able to maybe put all of them into play. Remember, lands are essentially mana value 0, so we get to put those into play as well. We have a few ways, we have at least one way to get things out of our graveyard, but Genesis Wave is here. Is of course, like all the X spells, best with a big X, and we can get an awful lot of things into play with it. So if we've stocked up on black mana, we can dump that into our X, and there we go. So I feel like we might have all of our X spells here in the Omnath section, but that's all right. Invoke the Firemind is another X and 3 mana draw spell, but instead of triple blue, it's blue, blue, red, because it's modal. As a sorcery, we can either draw X cards or do X damage to any target. That's great. This is essentially a fireball, if we need it to be, to kill whatever creature we want to get rid of on the battlefield. We might be able to kill an opponent with this. Invoke the Firemind has just this kind of flexibility. Sometimes is better than more flexibility on a small effect. You want something big? Here it is. So we have another Ascendancy, Jeskai Ascendancy. Blue, red, and a white for an enchantment that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn and untap them. And when you cast a non-creature spell, you may draw a card, and if you do, discard a card. So a little card selection there, but you can see we're running a total of 25 creatures, not counting the tokens that we'll be generating quite a few of. So buffing those up with non-creature spells, maybe we have a full hand of them. That can really help us a lot. And untapping them, that can't hurt either. Now for Jeskai Charm, for the same mana cost, a blue, a red, and a white. Choose one for an instant, put target creature on top of its owner's library, so they don't even get a choice, it's just going on top. Jeskai Charm deals 4 damage to an opponent or planeswalker, or creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain lifelink until end of turn, one of our life gain effects. So this is good removal, solid removal, and mass pump. Seems good to me. Kellen Joins Up is a legendary enchantment, and I think is the only card in the deck that cares about how many legends we're running, but we are running quite a few of them. For Bant mana, we get a legendary enchantment that when it enters, we may exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less from our hand, and if we do, it becomes plotted. Plotted means that we can cast it on a later turn at sorcery speed without paying its mana cost. And as we saw, that we have an awful lot of cards in this deck that are mana value 3 or less. So the likelihood we're going to have one in our hand is pretty good. Also, whenever a legendary creature enters, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control. So those are counters, the same way Broker's Ascendancy puts counters on rather than the temporary bonus that Jeskai Ascendancy gives us. And we've got so many legends that this is just going to give us bigger and bigger and bigger creatures. And we have the ability to cast something for free later on. The only thing we want to make sure is we don't exile a card with X in its mana value. Because then, if we cast it without paying its mana cost, we don't get to pay that X. And so we would have to treat the X as 0, so not very helpful. Next up is Lagrella the Magpie, another New Capenna card. Lagrella is really fun, but has one of the more confusing text boxes in Modern Magic. So for Bant mana, we get a 2/3 human soldier that says, when Lagrella enters the battlefield, exile any number of other target creatures controlled by different players until Lagrella leaves the battlefield. Let's talk about that. There are lots of ways to read this, but the correct way is this is Grasp of Fate for creatures. It's an Oblivion Ring effect or a Banishing Light effect, whatever you want to call it. We just exile up to one creature controlled by each player. That includes us, because it says exile any number of other target creatures controlled by different players. So you can't get two creatures from the same player because those are controlled by the same player and they have to be controlled by different players. However, it can target one of our creatures, and the reason we might want that is because whenever an exiled card enters the battlefield under your control this way meaning when Lagrella leaves the battlefield, we put 2 counters on it. So the idea is Lagrella comes in and exiles up to one creature from every player, including us, and when Lagrella leaves the battlefield, all those creatures come back, and if she had exiled something of ours, it will come back with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. In essence, Lagrella is supposed to be our Grasp of Fate. She's supposed to exile the scariest things or the most advantageous things from each of our other opponents' playmats, and maybe one of ours if we have something that we don't need for now and we would like to come back with counters assuming Lagrella dies. And if we've gotten rid of some of the best things from our opponents, she's got a target on her back. Next up is Lifeblood Hydra. X and triple green for Hydra with trample that comes in with counters equal to X. And when it dies, we gain life and draw cards equal to its power. So that power may be the X that it came in with, or it may have gotten bigger, either with more counters or with temporary bonuses, and we'll draw some life, or we'll draw some cards and we'll gain some life. Llanowar Tribe costs 3 green, it's a 3/3 elf druid, taps for 3 green. This is just a lot of fun. We reveal this off of Omnath, add 3 green to our mana pool, pay the 3 green, next turn we can tap for 3 green. It just ramps us in a way that is just a lot of fun. I think this is a cool card. I love when they take 3 little creatures, like Llanowar Elves, and make them into one big creature, like what they did with Healer's Hawk and Healer's Flock. It's just neat. Next up is March of the Multitudes. X, green, and 2 white for an instant that creates X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink, but it also has Convoke. So if we have made a bunch of other tokens, let's say, we can tap those and use them to pay for March of the Multitudes and add to the X. That seems pretty good. Lots of tokens to pump up in other ways. Next up we have Morska, Undersea Sleuth. Morska is a 2/3 Vidalcan Fish Detective, not a merfolk, for Bant mana that says we have no maximum hand size. We have a few sources of that, and it's really helpful in this deck. Also, at the beginning of our upkeep, we investigate, so we make a clue token. And then whenever we draw our second card each turn, which you may not be surprised to learn we are doing pretty often, we put 2 1/1 counters on Morska. So Morska gets big pretty easily. Now, I do want to comment though, it says whenever you draw your second card each turn. Omnath's ability does not draw us a card. Omnath's ability lets us look at a card, and then put it into our hand. But because it doesn't say draw, we're not drawing, so it won't trigger Morska's third ability here. However, we're building up an awful lot of mana every turn. So what's a good way to use that mana? Crack a clue token that we've gotten every upkeep from Morska. That's great. Naya Charm is another charm for red, a green, and a white. It's an instant that lets us choose to either do 3 damage to a creature, bring a card from a graveyard to its owner's hand, so we can use that politically, or it could be for us, or tap all creatures target player controls. Also political, but great for us. It just essentially means that all of our creatures become unblockable, or all of our opponent's creatures become unblockable when they attack a different opponent, and we tap down that different opponent's creatures. Naya Charm, often undervalued, I have found, but very strong. Next up, another March of the Machine legend, which I will be building a deck for at some point. It's Pelucranos Reborn. For triple green, we get a 4/5 Hydra with Reach. That's good. That's above rate. But Pelucranos also has this ability. For 6 and a Phyrexian white, so either 6 mana and a white, or 6 generic mana and 2 life, we can transform Pelucranos as a sorcery into Pelucranos Engine of Ruin. This Pelucranos is a 6/6 Reach lifelink that when it dies, it will make a 3/3 green and white Phyrexian Hydra with Reach, and another one of those, but with lifelink instead of Reach. So it's like a Wormcoil Engine. But rather than having Wormcoil Engine's abilities, it has Reach and lifelink. Pelucranos is pretty fun, but notably as well, Pelucranos gives us a way to spend our mana if we need to. This is only at sorcery speed, of course, but if we have a bunch of black mana sitting in our pool and we are worried that our commander's not long for this world, we just dump it into Pelucranos. And then we go from a 4/5 Reach to a 6/6 Reach lifelink with a little bit of insurance on it, because if it's destroyed, we get to keep our friends. We get to keep 2 little baby versions of it. So yeah. Next, we have a Fallout card, Rampaging Yaoguai. Yaoguai, perhaps, is how you say it. Not sure. For X and triple green, we get a 2/2 Bear Mutant with Vigilance and Trample that comes in with counters on it equal to the X. So as opposed to the Hydra over here, we're paying X and triple green, but its power and toughness are 2 higher because it's a bear, so it's a 2/2. And when it enters the battlefield, we blow up any number of artifacts and or enchantments with total mana value X or less. So kind of a big removal spell in addition to a big creature with Vigilance and Trample. Next up, we have one of our couple of tutors that we have in the deck, Rocco Cabaretti Caterer. Rocco is X and Naya mana for a 3/1 Elf Druid. It says when he enters, if we cast him, we can search our library for a creature card with mana value X or less and just put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. So we've got plenty of good creatures. A lot of those creatures are not super expensive. So if X is 5, we've got most of our creatures. If X is 3, we've still got quite a few creatures. But a little familiarity with this deck will let you know exactly what you need to spend in order to get exactly the thing you're looking for. And keep in mind, I haven't been saying this every time we have an X spell, but if you reveal Rocco off of Omnath's trigger, you could just add the red, green, white to your pool, and you're spending whatever mana you want to get whatever creature you want, just pumping that into the X. Just a lot of fun. The same thing is true for Sphinx's Revelation, although at instant speed you can do this on another person's turn. It's another one of our X and 3 mana to draw X cards, but it also gains us X life. Sphinx's Rev is a classic. Teamer Charm is another charm for green, a blue, and a red. That's an instant that says choose one. Either target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and it fights a creature you don't control, so it's not quite a bite, but it's still good. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 3, so mana leak. Or creatures with power 3 or less can't block this turn. So if we're facing someone who's playing some kind of massive tokens deck, we make it so most or all of their creatures can't block, and we swing right in. Next up, we have Vreston. Menopra Leader. Yes, Vreston. Hello, Vreston. I'm not a Doctor Who watcher. Vreston is X, 2 green, and a white for a 0/0 alien scout with flying, but it comes in with X counters on it. And when it enters, you make X 1/1 green and white alien insect creature tokens with flying, so a bunch of little flyers. And whenever you attack with 1 or more insects, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of them. What's crazy about that is that means if you have, let's say X is 3, Vreston. I'll get it one day. Vreston comes in as a 3/3, and you make 3 little insects. Let's say you only attack next turn with Vreston. Vreston attacks, and you put a counter on it, because when you attack with 1 or more insects, you put a counter on each of them. So it's only the attacking insects. But if you attack with all of them, they all get a counter. So it encourages you to keep attacking with your insects over and over. We don't have any other insects in this deck, but Vreston comes in with their own. Next up, we have a Lord of the Rings card, Aragorn the Uniter. Aragorn the Uniter is 4 colors, red, green, white, and blue for a 5/5 human noble, but we get so much synergy out of Aragorn. Aragorn says whenever you cast a white spell, make a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Whenever you cast a blue spell, scry 2. Whenever you cast a red spell, Aragorn will do 3 damage to an opponent, and whenever you cast a green spell, one of your creatures gets +4/+4 until end of turn. It doesn't have to be your creature, in fact. It could be a different creature, different players' creatures. So Aragorn not only is giving us so many triggers every time we cast a spell, Aragorn triggers for every color in our spells in the spell that we're casting. So if we cast Teamer Charm, we're getting all of Aragorn's triggers except the white one, because this is a spell that is green, it's blue, and it's red. If we were to have another card like Aragorn that has all of these different 4 colors in it, we would trigger Aragorn all 4 times. Just a lot of incidental value that just keeps getting better and better. Jetmir, Nexus of Revels, is one of our kind of finisher cards. As we build up our creatures, Jetmir just makes all of them better. For 1 and Cabaret mana, Naya mana, we get a 5/4 cat demon that says creatures you control get +1/+0 and have vigilance as long as you have 3 or more creatures. They get an additional +1/+0 and now trample as well as long as you have 6 or more creatures. And 1 more +1/+0 and now double strike if you have 9 or more creatures. It's not hard to get up that high in this deck. So all of your creatures have vigilance, trample, and double strike, and of course +3/+0. Jetmir is an absolute removal magnet, and he ought to be, which means people aren't using removal on Omnath. That's helpful. So Magnus Lucia Kane is from the Warhammer Commander decks. They are a 1/1 human tyrannid wizard for 1 and Teamer mana that has 2 abilities. Spiritual Leader says at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So just 1, but that's every turn. And Psychic Stimulus. You can tap this card to add 2 generic mana, or 2 colorless mana, I should say, like a Soul Ring. And when you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, or activate an ability with X in its activation cost, this turn, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this lets us, let's say, cast Vreston and copy it. That won't help us a lot, because Vreston is a legendary creature. But let's say we make the copy comes in, it makes its little insects. The original comes in, legend rule, we get rid of the copy, let's say, and the original will then make its insects. So we've doubled our insects at the very least. Or if we use that for Sphinx's Revelation, just to be a simpler example, we're paying white, blue, blue, and then X, which may be just the 2 that we spent from Lucia Kane, and that's draw 2 cards, gain 2 life twice, because Lucia Kane's ability will copy it. But it's also worth noting, not that this is going to come up too often, I imagine, but Lucia Kane's ability doesn't say when you spend this mana to cast a spell with X in its mana cost or activate an ability with X in its activation cost, copy it. It just says when you next do. So you could use that 2 mana to cast an Arcane Signet. And then if you cast a Sphinx's Revelation or a Rocco or something, you would get to be able to copy that spell or ability. Lucia Kane is terrific. And worst case scenario, maybe you don't have something you want to spend that colorless mana on during your turn. You just wait until the opponent to your right's in step and tap Lucia Kane, put that colorless mana in your mana pool, because it doesn't have any riders on it. It doesn't say you have to spend it on something with an X in its mana cost. So you just tap it right before it's your turn, Omnath will just turn it into black mana, and you can just save it up and then pump it into something next turn. Or anytime in the future you want. So next up we have Omnath, something that would make Aragorn very happy for you to cast. Omnath, Locus of Creation, is the 4-mana Omnath. This Omnath does a lot. For a red, a green, a white, and a blue, so the same cost as our commander but without paying life, you get a 4/4 elemental that says when this Omnath enters, draw a card. Okay, replaces itself. And landfall, whenever a land enters under your control, you gain 4 life the first time this ability is resolved. If it's the second time, you add the casting cost of Omnath, a red, a green, and a blue, and a white. And if it's the third time, Omnath deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you don't control. So, to be clear, this doesn't stack up, because the gaining 4 life happens if this is the first time, not the first time you do it, and then every other time. So you're not getting any value out of Omnath's landfall if you, I don't know, get 4 lands into play in the same turn. But you are gaining life, adding mana, doing damage to your opponents, and when it comes in, it draws you a card. So Omnath has sort of a mirror in terms of its utility to Aragorn, because Omnath is giving you lots of different interesting values for your land drops. Aragorn's giving you lots of different interesting value adds for your spells. Next, we have our Planeswalker. It's Tamiyo, Field Researcher. For 1, a green, a white, and a blue, we get a legendary Planeswalker, Tamiyo, that comes in with 4 loyalty. +1, we can choose up to 2 target creatures, and until our next turn, whenever either of those creatures deals combat damage, we draw a card. So it doesn't say creatures that we control. So we can put this on our opponent's creatures. Maybe one of our opponents has goaded a different opponent's creatures. Maybe someone is just being very aggressive. We can choose those creatures, and whenever they do combat damage, we'll draw a card off of it. It's great to put this on a creature, whether it's ours or someone else's, that has vigilance, because then that creature is likely to be blocking and attacking, and we'll be able to draw cards multiple times. Tamiyo's -2 ability is tap up to 2 target non-land permanents, and they don't untap during their controller's next untap step. So this was designed before stun counters were a thing, but it's essentially tap 2 things, put a stun counter on them. That's a good way to, again, we can use this politically, but it's just a good way to slow someone down. Finally, Tamiyo's ultimate is draw 3 cards, you get an emblem with you may cast spells from your hand without paying their mana costs. So if you can get Tamiyo to 7 and untap with her, you get Omniscience. And Omniscience is crazy in this deck. You have plenty of things in this deck that have an X in the cost, so you wouldn't want to cast those spells without paying their mana cost, especially with the way that Omnath gives you more and more mana. But everything else, go nuts. Tamiyo is a lot of fun, and there are ways that you can pump Tamiyo up without just using the +1 ability, but the +1 ability is pretty good on its own. Just keep in mind, we have Broker's Ascendancy, which also puts loyalty counters on our Planeswalkers. So, that's Tamiyo. Let's talk about Chulane from Throne of Eldraine. Chulane is a 2/4 human druid with vigilance for 2 and Bant mana that says whenever you cast a creature spell, of which we have 24 besides Chulane, draw a card, and then you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So that's Growth Spiral. Every time you cast a creature, you Growth Spiral. In addition, Chulane says for 3 generic and tap, return target creature you control to its owner's hand. So not only does that give us a way to protect our creatures by bouncing them to our hand and recasting them, or bouncing Omnath to our hand and recasting it without any commander attacks, it also triggers Chulane's ability when we do recast it, because we're casting a creature spell. Chulane gives us a lot of value, and he's pretty well known for that. Elsha of the Infinite is a 3/3 Djinn Monk for 2 and Jeskai mana, with Prowess. Elsha lets us look at the top card of our library at any time, and we're able to cast non-creature spells from the top of our library as though they had flash. So, there's a lot to say about that, but it should be pretty obvious why that's good. If we want to surprise our opponents, we bring out Tamiyo as an instant. Tamiyo is a non-creature. We can cast any of those charms that we've already seen already at instant speed, but now we can cast them off the top of our library. Or we have several different sorceries that we've seen that are very strong, like Invoke the Firemind. That's instant speed fireball if we need it to be. Or Kellen joins up. If we want to, at instant speed, plot something from our hand, then it moves to our turn, because let's say we did this on an opponent's end step, and now we can cast that thing we plotted right away. Elsha is pretty strong for this. Gahiji, Honored One, is 2 and Naya mana for a 4/4 beast that says whenever a creature attacks one of our opponents or a planeswalker an opponent controls, that creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. This doesn't seem like it does that much, other than pump up our creatures, until we remember it's based on a creature attacking one of our opponents or one of their planeswalkers, not one of our creatures attacking one of our opponents or their planeswalkers. This is happening all the time. So it makes it so every bit of combat that isn't coming at us is enhanced. It changes the combat math people are having to deal with, whether it's them on the defense or them on the offense, and thereby incentivizes everyone to go after each other rather than go after us. Now, they may want to attack us to get rid of Gahiji, and if they do, well, yeah, that's reasonable. But we have plenty of things to stop our opponents in the form of our interactive spells, in the form of our powerful creatures, and our creatures that are pumped up in other ways. Gahiji just moves the game along and encourages people to say, well, yes, you could attack me, so as to get rid of Gahiji and not worry about your opponents attacking you with a bonus to their power. Or you could attack them, and then you don't have to worry about them attacking you because they're dead. Next up, we have Mr. Foxglove from the Bloomborough Commander decks. Look at this fox. This is a 3/5 Fox Rogue with lifelink for 2 and Bant mana that says whenever Mr. Foxglove attacks, draw cards equal to the number of cards in defending player's hand minus the number of cards in your hand. If you didn't draw cards this way, you may put a creature from your hand onto the battlefield. So it may be that sometimes we draw cards off of this. But generally, if we have at least as many cards as our opponent, and we usually will, we just get to put creatures onto the battlefield for free. We are generally not in need of mana, because Omnath is giving us plenty of it. But if we just don't feel like casting something, or if we want to surprise someone by casting something, Mr. Foxglove is a great way to do that. And if we don't, we're drawing cards off of it. So that's just going to give us help in other ways. Also, lifelink. We have Rien, Angel of Rebirth. I think this card is really cool. It's a 5/4 flying angel with that costs 2 and Naya mana that says other multicolored creatures you control, which is basically everything we've seen so far, gets +1/+0. That includes Omnath. And whenever another multicolored creature you control dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So this just protects our creatures in the sense that if it dies, we don't care. If it's exiled, sure, it was going to get exiled anyway. But Rien makes it so that if Mr. Foxglove or Chulane or Gahiji gets killed at the beginning of the next end step, we're going to put it back in our hand and be able to cast it again. Next up, we have Shiko, Paragon of the Way, from the recent Tarkir Dragonstorm set. Shiko is a 4/5 legendary spirit dragon with flying and vigilance for 2 and Jeskai mana. When Shiko enters, exile target non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard, copy it, then you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So this is giving shades of Kellen Joins Up. If we have something that's at least, or that's at most mana value 3 in our graveyard and we want to get it back, we can't exactly get it back, but we mostly can, because Shiko will enter, we will exile that, so it's gone forever, but we make a copy of it. So that's a good way to get back our Pelucranos, let's say, or Ligrella. We don't always want to hit something with an X in its mana cost, but some of them may not be bad, you know, just a 2/2 for free. So that's Shiko. Amareth, the Lustrous, is a 6/6 flying dragon for 3 and Bant that says whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under our control, we look at the top card of our library, and if that card shares a type with the permanent we just had enter, we can reveal that card and put it in our hand. This is just a good source of draw because we have such a relatively trustworthy split between our permanent types. Even if it's just a creature, we can look at the top card and we've got essentially a 25% chance. I know that's not how the math works, but kind of getting another creature. If we play an artifact or an enchantment, not that high of a chance, but maybe. But this also works on lands. So we play a land, look at the top card of our library. If it's another land, we get that land in our hand. Omnath is a lot of fun, and it's a 6/6 for 6, or with Omnath, if this is what we revealed off the top, it's a 6/6 flyer for 3. Cavalry Confluence is next. This is a 6-mana sorcery for 3 and Naya mana it works the way the confluences work, which is like a charm in that it has 3 modes, but instead of choosing 1, you can choose 3, and you can choose the same mode more than once. So those modes are create a token that's a copy of target creature you control that gains haste, and you sacrifice it at the next end step. So not great for our legendary creatures, but we have several non-legendary creatures. In worst case, we have just tokens in the deck. Exile target artifact or enchantment, so a stronger version of disenchant. Or creatures target player controls get +1/+1 and gain first strike until end of turn. So in all likelihood, we're going to be using this on us, on ourselves and our own creatures, because this is a sorcery. But if we really need it, this is a 6 mana, or if we revealed it with Omnath, a 3 mana, give all our creatures +3/+3 and first strike until end of turn. That's not terrible. We can also combine these, of course. So if we wanted to make 2 copies of creatures, which will gain haste, and then give everything, including those copies, +1/+1 and first strike until end of turn, we can do that. Lots of fun with the Cavalry Confluence. Next up is our 1 Wrath, Dragonback Assault. For 3 and Temur mana, we have an enchantment that when it enters, it does 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. So not a real Wrath, but it will clear the field in a lot of ways. It also has Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, create a 4/4 red dragon with flying. So that might be something we want to copy with Cavalry Influence. But the ability to just keep making dragons whenever we play lands, I mean, Dragonback Assault is something we can reveal off of Omnath, use the mana Omnath gives us to pay for half of it, spend the other 3 to pay the other half, play it, wipe a bunch of creatures, maybe even some of ours, why not? And then play our land for the turn and get a dragon. And that dragon's not going to die next time we play another land. So I know you're thinking, but what about Elsha? Elsha is so powerful with this. Well, if Elsha's in play, they're not going to die to the Dragonback Assault because Dragonback Assault is an enchantment. So it would have given Elsha prowess trigger, a prowess trigger, and made them a 4/4. So they'll survive. Next up is Expansion Explosion. I love this card. Expansion Explosion is a split card, which means that when it's not on the stack, it has a mana value, or a mana cost rather, I should say, well, both, that is a combination of the 2 spells costs. So when Omnath would look at this, Omnath would see a 6 mana spell with 6 different pips. So it counts for Omnath's ability to add mana. So we could add, 2 blue and a red, 2 red and a blue, all 3 blue, all 3 red, whatever. And then we can use expansion to either copy a target instant or sorcery with mana value 4 or less, choose new copies, or we can use explosion, and it's a slightly more expensive version of one of those X and 3 to draw X cards spells, because this will draw X cards for any player, so we could maybe mill someone out with this, or we could just give it to ourselves. But in addition, it also does X damage to any target, so it's a removal spell, it's maybe a kill spell, it costs more, but it does both, as opposed to the other Izzet spell that we had that does either one. Next, we have Road to Ruin. Road to Ruin, again, when Omnath sees this, Omnath is seeing a card that costs 3 generic, a green, and 2 red. So Road to Ruin will come in and we can add 3 green, we can add 3 red, 2 green and red, or 2 red and a green. But it's an aftermath card. So we can only cast it as Road until it's in the graveyard. And Road is just rampant growth for an extra mana. So we play this, we revealed this off of Omnath, and Omnath, as long as one of the mana that Omnath produces is green, we can cast Road with it, just for free, and get our extra land. So that's what Road does. Ruin, if it's hard to read, deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands we control, which is now higher because we cast Road. So this is, some might say, is a non-bow with Omnath, because we're getting a lot of mana from Omnath rather than from our lands. But we're also getting plenty of lands in this deck. It's not a worry, and it's something that I'll demonstrate a little later on. But so yeah, Road to Ruin is a great way to fix our mana and then get rid of something later when we need to, for just 3. Which I should finally mention. Ruin costs 1 and 2 red. So on a later turn, if we needed to, maybe we reveal, I don't know, Shiko off of Omnath. Shiko has red in its mana cost, so we can add, from Omnath's trigger of revealing Shiko, triple red, which we can use to cast Shiko if we want, or we can add Jeskai, it's fine. But that's, as long as we add 2 red for it, we can use that to cast Ruin and just blow something up, and then maybe it's ready for Shiko to come in. Maybe we're worried that they have their, I don't know, original Sheoldred out. Alright, next up, Genesis Ultimatum. This is the most difficult to cast, or most restrictively costed spell in our deck. I was going to run some of the other ultimatums, which you can see in the considering section, but Genesis Ultimatum is the one that is most useful and exciting for this deck. So for 2 green, 3 blue, and 2 red, we have a sorcery that lets us look at the top 5 cards of our library, put any number of permanents from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest in our hand, and then we exile Genesis Ultimatum. We don't need to do this more than once. It's great. Being able to put a bunch of permanents into play, even if they're lands, that helps us. Depending on what mana we have out among our mana sources, is going to determine what we want to add with our Omnath trigger if Genesis Ultimatum is revealed off of Omnath's trigger. Or if we look at it and we choose to reveal it. We might have plenty of green and plenty of red, but not enough blue, and we might want to just add triple blue. Or we might do a green, a blue, and a red, and we can just provide the other green, red, and 2 blue. Yeah, Genesis Ultimatum is a lot of fun. Maybe Jeskai Revelation is more fun, though, and easier to cast. So for 4 and Jeskai mana, so total of 7, we have an instant that does 5 things. We return target spell or permanent to its owner's hand. So that's spell, so that's something on the stack, or a permanent, which could be a land if we want. Then, Jeskai Revelation deals 4 damage to any target. Then we make 2 1/1 monk creature tokens with prowess. Then we draw 2 cards, and then we gain 4 life. Jeskai Revelation does it all, and all for 4 mana, assuming we have the other 3 from Omnath. That's a lot of fun. And if we don't want to do this on our turn with the mana we get from Omnath, we sure as shooting can do it on an opponent's turn. Wait until they've cast a spell, wait until they're attacking with their biggest creature, or they're activating their scary permanent. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Next, we have Storvald, Frost Giant Jarl. For 4, a green, a white, and a blue, so 4 and Bant, we get a 7/7 giant with Ward 3 that gives all of our creatures Ward 3, including our commander. And when Storvald enters or attacks, we get to choose one or both of these. Target creature has base power and toughness 7/7 until end of turn, or target creature has base power and toughness 1/1 until end of turn. So we can make our opponent's best creature tiny, and our best creature or our worst creature, whatever creature we think is most helpful, big. Maybe we're making one of these 4/4 dragons into a 7/7, and we're making their huge flyer into a 1/1. Storvald is a good experience for us and protects all of our creatures, especially Omnath, with Ward 3. Ward 3 is sort of mana leak for every spell that targets it. Anyway, that's neat. Finally, we have Zakama Primal Calamity. I love this dino. It is a 9/9 Elder Dinosaur with Vigilance, Reach, and Trample for 6 and Naya mana. So total of 9 mana, but only 6 mana with Omnath doing their thing. When Zakama enters the battlefield, if you cast it, untap all lands you control. So there's no reason not to tap all of your lands before you cast Zacama, even if you don't need to, because you're about to untap them anyway. And any unspent mana that you have at the end of your turn from doing this doesn't make a difference, because it'll just turn into black mana from Omnath. But you can also just use it right away with Zacama, because Zacama lets you pay 2 and a red to do 3 damage to a creature, 2 and a green to naturalize something, destroy an artifact or enchantment, or 2 and a white to just gain 3 life. So Zacama is another terrific mana sink, like the one I mentioned earlier, Pelucranos. There we go. So those are all the spells that I've tagged in this deck as Omnath spells, ones that will trigger Omnath's ability. There are plenty of other spells, but let's look at the next section here, which is our X spells. I believe we've probably seen all of these, and we have, yeah. I've set those aside because much like Zacama and Pelucranos, these are ways to use up all of that extra black mana that we have. And we get plenty of value out of casting X spells when we need to, especially if Vreston is in play. I'm sorry, not Vreston, but Magnus Lucia Kane is in play, because we can then copy these spells. And like I mentioned, a few of these are legendary creatures. 3 of them, not counting Magnus Lucia Kane on their own. But if we maybe cast a Rampaging Laogai with Lucia Kane in play, we get an extra one and blow up more things. Or we do more damage, or a lot more damage and draw more cards, or make a lot more tokens. We can only have fun with this. So before we go into other spells that are supposed to help this deck, let's go into our base line of support cards, starting with Draw. Now you just use the word Draw here to represent card advantage just because it's short. We'll talk about that. That's just sort of a thing I do for simplicity of tagging. We're going to start with Case of the Shattered Pact, which is here to fix our mana. For 2 generic, when this case enters, it's an enchantment case, we search our library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle. So it's 2 mana for Lay of the Land. Not ideal, but at least it finds us the color we're looking for. If at the end of our turn, there are 5 colors among permanents we control, the case becomes solved. If Omnath is in play, there are 5 colors among permanents we control. Because Omnath is the only permanent we have that is black. That's not actually technically true, but you'll see the exception soon. In either case, if Case of the Shattered Pact has been solved, which means if we've had an end step in which we had 5 colors among permanents we control, which is to say Omnath is in play essentially, then the case gets the solved ability, which is at the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gains flying, double strike, and vigilance at the end of turn. That doesn't have to be Omnath or whatever creature or permanent we have that is 5 colors. It can be anything. So maybe it's something that our Jarl made into a 7/7, or it's just the Jarl itself. Flying, double strike, and vigilance just gets rid of whatever's in the way, and that just may be an opponent. Planar Genesis is one of our favorite 2-mana ramp spells for this deck. But it's a draw spell as well. For a green and a blue, we have an instant that says, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land from among them onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't, put a card from among them into your hand, and then put the rest, either way, on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this will draw us a card if it doesn't ramp us. We're going to get something either way. Planar Genesis is solid. We've seen these 6, and we've seen these ones, and we've seen, we haven't seen Widespread Thieving. Widespread Thieving is the only other card in the deck that cares about us being able to spend black mana as black. So, as you know, Omnath is going to let us build up our black mana, and if we have to recast Omnath in the same turn, in our same turn, I guess, we might still have some black mana lying around. We can just use that rather than spending life for the Phyrexian black in Omnath's cost. However, we also had Widespread Thieving. Widespread Thieving is 2 and a red for an enchantment with Hideaway 5. Hideaway 5 is you look at the top 5 when this enters and exile one of those face down under Widespread Thieving, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. And it says, whenever you cast a multicolored spell, which I know you have seen is most of our spells, create a treasure token. And then, part of the same ability, you may pay Wooburg to play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So that means, whatever we've put under Widespread Thieving, if we cast a multicolored spell, before that multicolored spell resolves, we will make a treasure, and then we have the ability to pay Wooburg, which we can from the mana that we have and the floating black mana, but we can also just use that treasure we just made. That's a good way for us to be able to make black mana and make black mana for Widespread Thieving. And then if we do, we can play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Oftentimes you see play the exiled card written as cast the exiled card. This is play, so we could exile a land under here if we really wanted to, but there are a lot of exciting cards that we would probably rather have, and 5 mana is a lot to pay for them, but that 5 mana we're not going to be hurting for, and it's something we get to do for free as we ramp ourselves every time we cast a multicolored spell using Widespread Thieving. So we've seen these next 6 and all of the rest of them. Yeah, we've covered a lot of our spells in the Omnath section, but it's important to go over these other ones and see what cards we can get advantage of as well. Widespread Thieving, I know you're thinking, well, that doesn't draw you a card, but it does give you card advantage because it gives you the free cast, or free play, I should say, once you get its trigger and pay the Wooburg. So let's actually look at our ramp package. Some of this is going to be pretty obvious, like Soul Ring. Soul Ring is a little awkward in this deck. It does give us mana, and that mana is great, but we have a lot of colored pips. So being able to produce just colorless mana, sometimes the best we can do with this, or sometimes all we need to use this for, rather, is waiting until our opponent to the right's end step, tapping it for colorless, which will then become black with Omnath. But that still adds mana for us. It's all right. Arcane Signet, on the other hand, it just gives us what we need. You know, any color in our commander's color identity, which is Wooburg. This is another source of black, of course, as would be Fellwar Stone. Fellwar Stone is 2 mana, adds 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls can produce. That means, unless we're playing against 3 opponents that are all mono black, Fellwar Stone is giving us something we can use. We have Farseek. Farseek is terrific because it's rampant growth, but specifically for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain. Put it in the battlefield tapped, shuffle. It doesn't find us forests, but that's okay because we have 3 cards in this deck, and if you want to upgrade this deck, you can get more of them. 3 lands that have multiple types. So we can find those with plains, island, swamp, or mountain, and at least 2 of those give us green mana as well. So Farseek is the only sort of rampant growth spell we're running in here, unless you count Planar Genesis. Not really one, but kind of. And it's gonna find what we want. I believe it's also the least expensive version of this effect for this kind of deck, and for the colors we're looking for in our dual lands. Much like Arcane Signet and Fellwar Stone, Obsidian Obelisk is an artifact that taps for mana that costs 2. It does itself enter tapped, but it can add colorless mana or mana of any color that we can only use for multicolored spells, which means usually it taps for 1 of any color that we need. It's an Arcane Signet that comes in tapped. That's still worth running. And if not, then it's giving us colorless mana, and we can use that too. We've talked about Planar Genesis. Here's Ancient Cornucopia. For 2 and a green, it is a 3 mana rock that taps for 1 mana of any color, but whenever we cast a spell that's 1 or more colors, we may gain 1 life for each of that spell's colors. Do this only once each turn. So it doesn't have to be the first time we cast a spell that's 1 or more colors. We can just only get it to resolve. We can only choose to gain life for each of the spell's colors once each turn. So maybe we cast Planar Genesis, and then we cast a 3 or 4 color spell, and Ancient Cornucopia will trigger for both, but we don't have to choose to gain the life off of Planar Genesis just because we cast it first. We might gain a life from the latter spell as well, or instead. Next up is another 3 mana rock. It's Chromatic Lantern. Lands we control have tap to add 1 mana of any color, and it also taps for 1 mana of any color. So this fixes our mana essentially perfectly. After that, we have Cultivate, which is just so good in this deck. It's good in every deck, but it's terrific here. 2 and a green, search our library for 2 basics, put 1 in our hand and 1 on the battlefield tapped. This makes it so we definitely have a land drop to hit next turn. It gets us the colors that we're looking for. Can't say enough about Cultivate and its usefulness in this deck. But interestingly, the same is true of Falaji Wayfarer. So Falaji Wayfarer is a weird, interesting card. It is a 2/4 human scout for 2 and a green that says Falaji Wayfarer is all colors. This ability doesn't affect its color identity. It doesn't matter about the color identity, but the fact that it's all colors, why would that matter? Well, because its other ability is multicolored spells you cast have Convoke, which means not only can you tap all of your creatures for any multicolored spell you want to cast, not just a creature spell, but you can tap Falaji Wayfarer for any color, because with Convoke, tapping a creature to help cast a Convoke spell either pays for a generic mana or 1 mana of a color that creature is. Falaji Wayfarer is all colors. So Falaji Wayfarer is a way for us to tap for black if we need to when we're casting Omnath, or just anything. So it's sort of a 3 mana tap for something of any color, like a Chromatic Lantern or an Ancient Cornucopia, these 3 mana rocks, but it's also a creature. I think it's just a neat card. We want to play neat cards in this deck. We've seen Genesis Wave and Kellen joins up. We've seen Land War Tribe. We haven't seen Relic of Legends, though. It's another 3 mana rock that taps for 1 of any color, but we can also tap an untapped legendary creature we control to add an additional 1 mana of any color. We can do that as many times as we want. So maybe we have Magnus, Lucia Kane, and Zakama, and Chulain, and what we want to use them for is mana. We're allowed to do that as many times as we want with Relic of Legends. And then those are our ramp spells, our acceleration spells. So let's talk about our next section, which is interaction. We call it removal, just like I call card advantage draw and acceleration ramp, but it's just interaction spells. We've seen these first 8 spells. We have not seen mana cannons. Mana cannons is so good in this deck. For 2 and a red, we have an enchantment that says whenever you cast a multicolored spell, Mana Cannons deals X damage to any target where X is the number of colors that spell is. So you've got Mana Cannons out, you cast Naya Charm, Mana Cannons will trigger and do 3 damage to any target. It might be an opponent, might be a creature, it could be a planeswalker, a battle, doesn't matter. It's just a free lightning bolt off of playing a 3-color spell. With Invoke them Firemind, Mana Cannons will do 2 damage because even though it has 3 colored pips, it's only 2 colors. Get a lot of value out of this, especially if you get to play it early on. We've seen the next several. We've seen all of the rest, so that's our interaction. I mentioned we have a Wrath in this, and that Wrath is, as you know, Dragonback Assault. It only hits everything for 3 mana, for 3 damage rather, but it produces a bunch of dragons, which is not itself a Wrath. But we've just got a lot going on in this deck, and a lot of it involves our creatures. I feel like too many actual sweepers is not to our advantage. But what is our next section. Synergy. Synergy are cards in this deck that care about multicolored things. So we've seen a bunch of these already. Case of the Shattered Pact. It lets us solve it if we have 5 colors among our permanents. Obsidian Obelisk gives us the ability to tap for any color for multicolored spells. Ancient Cornucopia gains us life. Falaji Wayfarer gives us the ability to convoke multicolored spells, and so forth. General Ferrus Rokurik is a 3/1 human soldier for 1 a red and a white with hexproof from monocolored. So if someone wants to lightning bolt this or Source to Plowshares it, it has hexproof. As well as, whenever we cast a multicolored spell, we get a 4/4 red and white golem. So we're just going to be able to pump out a lot of tokens with the General over and over and over. I just think this is a cool card, and I've wanted to run it for a long time. We have seen Mana Cannons. Let's talk about Spirit of Resistance. Spirit of Resistance may be a card people don't want to run, but I think it's a neat one. For 2 and a white, it's an enchantment that says if you... Let's actually look at the Oracle text for it. As long as you control a permanent of each color, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. Just period. We can't take damage, as long as that damage is not unpreventable, as long as we control our commander, a permanent of each color, or as long as we control Falaji Wayfarer, which is also all colors. So Spirit of Resistance, while our commander's out, just makes us very strong. Now, does that mean that our commander becomes a removal magnet? Of course it does. But we also If our commander's out and we're casting spells, we're probably pretty far ahead anyway. I wouldn't worry about it. Next up is a New Capenna commander card that I think is just so much fun. It's a traffic light. It's threefold signal. An artifact for 3 mana that when it enters, we scry 3, and each spell we cast that's exactly 3 colors, of which most of our spells are, has replicate 3, which means when we cast it, we copy it for each time we play the replicate cost. And we can pay that replicate cost over and over and over. This is a great mana sink. For all that black mana we've been accumulating, let's say we play, I don't know, a cheap one. We'll play Broker's Charm to try and bite something. We can pay another 3 mana of any type we want, maybe just black, to replicate that, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. It only happens when you cast it, of course, so you have to choose to replicate it however many times once it's on the stack. But when you do, you get to do a lot more, you get a lot more value out of it. And if you use this for something that is a permanent spell, like a creature, you get that as an extra token copy of it. We've seen these other 2. So that's our synergy section. Let's look. I've been talking about tokens. Let's talk about all the places we get them. I think we may have seen all of these already, and we have. These are the ways we get tokens. Citizens, golems, soldiers. Pelucranos makes it little baby copies of itself. Flying insects, more human soldiers. We can make a token copy of a thing. We can make dragons. We can make prowess monks. We can make another token copy of a thing, even though it gets sacrificed at the end step. Lots of different ways to supplement the 25 creature cards that we have in this deck. Now we're going to look at our pump section, because we want to take those creatures and make them threats. So I believe we've seen all of this. Yeah, everything on here makes our creatures bigger or makes our creatures more frightening, either with counters or bumps until the end of turn, static effects, abilities that don't exactly pump it, but flying, double strike, and vigilance is a pretty good pump effect, in my opinion. So yeah, that is all of our spells. Let's talk about our lands like we usually do. So we're running 14 basics in this. 4 forests and plains, 3 islands and mountains, because that's our land mix. We're a little heavier on green and a little bit more on white than we are on blue and red. And of course I've chosen these Adam Paquette Zendikar Rising full arts because Omnath is from Zendikar. We are running 9 fixing lands. So we're going to look at them this way. We have 3 soft fetches. Evolving Wilds is going to find any of our basics that we need. Broker's Hideout and Cabaret Courtyard will find the 2 most prevalent ones, which is green and white. And Broker's Hideout can also find blue, Cabaret Courtyard can also find red. And gain us a little life, in case we want that. We also have 4 5-color lands. Command Tower taps for any color on our commander's identity. Path of Ancestry does the same thing, even though it comes in tapped. And when you use it to cast a creature that shares a type with our commander, which is just Omnath or 4-color Omnath, we scry 1. Exotic Orchard may not be 5 colors, but it could be, depending on what our opponents are running. Gateway Plaza is a little bit slower, but it's Rupture Spire. It comes in tapped. When it does, you have to pay 1 generic or sacrifice it, but then after that, you add 1 mana of any color. Generally, this is not too bad because we've got plenty of mana floating around in the form of that black mana that Omnath gives us. And of course, we have Plaza of Heroes, our most expensive land. It taps for colorless, or it taps for 1 mana of any color, but only for legendary spells, or 1 mana of any color among legendary permanents we control. So if Omnath is out, it's a 5-color land. We can also pay 3 tap and exile it to give a legendary creature we control hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. That protects Omnath, that protects any of our other legends that we need. If we don't need this land anymore, it's great. Last of all, we have the World Tree from Kaldheim. Love this card. It has an ability we don't care about, which is the double Wooburg ability, but it comes in tapped, taps for green, and as long as we have 6 or more lands, including it, all of our lands can tap for 1 mana of any color. So it is a Chromatic Lantern on a land, as long as we have enough lands. So this absolutely fixes our mana in ways that we need. And on its own, it taps for green, which is our most prevalent color. Next, we are running 6 Pain Lands. Pain Lands tap for generic mana or one of 2 colors and does a damage to us. We have plenty of life gain in this deck, and we're willing to take damage from Omnath, so we're not afraid of losing the life if we need to. But I put these in here because these are untapped duels, and we're going to want that because we really want to get Omnath out by turn 5. Sometimes turn 3 is when as early as we can get him. But if we can get turn 4, then that's really what we're shooting for, but at least turn 5. So these untapped duels really help us here. We also have 3 tapped lands. These are the lands that are our typed duels. You can see Canopy Vista is a forest plains. So with Farseek doesn't let us find a forest, but it lets us find a plains, and so we can get Canopy Vista if we want. And all these cards come into play tapped unless we control 2 or more basics as well. These are great, but if we really want to upgrade, we could upgrade them to shock lands and really ensure that we get an untapped duel. We're willing to take the shock anyway. And much like those Pain Lands, if you wanted, you could kind of, it's not really an upgrade, but you could sort of side grade these into the slow lands from Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, because those come in untapped if they are the third or after, if you have 3 or more lands, including them, they come in untapped and tap for 2. So much of the time, they're not going to be tap lands, but these are always tap lands and just do damage to you all the time. So anyway, side grade there in my mind. Next up, we're running 4 tri-lands. These are ones that don't have black. They are always going to be tapped, but they're always going to be the lands that fix our mana best other than the 5-color lands. Of course, obviously, you can upgrade these to triomes if you're willing to spend an awful lot more money. Finally, we have 2 utility lands. I run Demolition Field in most of my decks. It's just a good way to deal with, your opponent's Kessig Wolf run, or maybe they're absolutely popping off with Omniscience and Reliquary Tower, and you can't stop their Omniscience, but you could sure make them discard down by getting rid of the Reliquary Tower. Also of note, Demolition Field is sort of an Evolving Wilds if we have 2 extra mana and our opponent has a non-basic, and how often does that not happen in Commander? So we can tap this for colorless or pay 2 generic, tap and sack it to make blow up one of our opponent's non-basic lands and let them rampant growth, and then we get to rampant growth. So worst case scenario, maybe we have, I don't know, an opening hand with an island and a mountain and a Demolition Field. On turn 3, we can crack the Demolition Field, blow up a non-basic that one of our opponents has, and get in a forest or a plains with it. At least it lets us fix our mana that way if we really have to. And finally, we're running a Reliquary Tower because we draw a lot of cards in this deck. We get a lot of cards to our hand in this deck, and we want to be able to not have to throw them away. So I want to do something a little different for this video than I normally do, which is to demonstrate what an average hand looks like, and to show you in this way how we can often get our commander out early on in the game. Very quickly though, I'll show you the mana curve again, which is so ridiculous. But let's draw a different hand from this and see how quickly we can get Omnath out. So this hand is not terrific, but it's not horrible because we have a Kerplucent Forest, which will tap for red and green, even with pain, and a white source. So we have 3 of our colors right here. We don't have more than 2 lands, but we do have a Chromatic Lantern and we have Widespread Thieving. So if we were to draw a 3rd land, we can completely fix our mana. Or at the very least, we could play Widespread Thieving, then be able to maybe cast some multicolored spells and make treasure off of it. So let's see how this goes. Turn 1, we'll draw a card. We get a Cabaretti Charm, that's not ideal. We'll play the Kerplucent Forest, let's say. Turn 2, we get Aragorn, this isn't going well for us. We play our Plains. Turn 3, we're hurting for this. So we're going to have to discard down, and we'll discard something. And we'll draw out a Jeskai Charm. It's still stuck. We kept a 2-land hand, and it's tough, but we can play our Canopy Vesta on this next turn, this turn 5, and that into the Chromatic Lantern. Now we don't have to discard down, And because of that, we have green, white, red, and blue, and the next turn we can cast Omnath and probably catch up with our ramp from Omnath. We would have drawn this Mystic Monastery on that turn, and Omnath would reveal a Yavimaya Coast, which doesn't help us in terms of ramping, but we'll at least have mana to go with. Let's try a different one. This hand is not good. We only have one land, and even though we might draw into something that we can Farseek off of, I've definitely had hands in this deck that I could make that work, but not worth it. Let's mulligan that, since we do get a free mulligan. And yes, we can't keep this either. So let's mulligan down to 6. This is much better. We have 3 green sources, which is too bad, but Frontier Bivouac at least gives us 2 other colors available to us. So let's say on turn 1, we draw and we play the Bivouac. Turn 2, we draw and we play a Forest. Turn 3, we draw and we play Falaji Wayfarer. So now, we can't quite cast our commander, but we can use the Wayfarer to convoke a creature if we needed to. One of those creatures could be Ligrella. We could slow our opponents down. Or if we didn't want to play the Wayfarer, we could play Widespread Thieving. And then on the next turn, we play a mountain, we play a multicolored spell like Falaji Wayfarer, which will trigger Widespread Thieving, make us a treasure, and the turn after that, which I believe is turn 5, we're able to get out Omnath. As long as we can do it by turn 5, we're doing okay. This hand is terrific. We've got blue, green, white, and Broker's Hideout doesn't find us red, but I bet we can get there somehow. So let's draw a card. All right, we'll Broker's Hideout, I think, and get ourselves another green source, let's say, since we're not going to cast anything this turn anyway, and now we're good. We're going to be able to Cinderglade on turn 3, and turn 4, get out Omnath. Yet another hand. This one is not ideal, but we're going to try it. Draw on our first turn. Oh yeah, we're good, because we have 3 lands. Turn 3, Chromatic Lantern. Turn 4, Omnath. Let's do 2 more. This one is terrific. We have all of our colors except for blue. So turn 1, we draw, and we'll play a Cinderglade, because it'll come in tapped, and we don't need to do anything with it. Turn 2, Genesis Wave doesn't do anything for us, so we play a Brushland. Turn 3, we'll play this Forest and this Llanowar Tribe. So we don't have blue mana, but we do have an awful lot of mana to do things with now. Maybe we can Genesis Wave ourselves into something. On turn 4, we tap the Llanowar Tribe for the Chromatic Lantern. We tap the Chromatic Lantern and our 3 lands, plus let's say the Battlefield Forge, we play it, and we have Omnath and 1 mana remaining. So 1 more of these, and we'll figure it out. And this hand is terrific. So let's say turn 1, we can play that. Normally, when you have Soul Ring in your first hand, or in your opening hand, and tap lands, you don't mind playing Soul Ring on your second turn, because how often do you have to play something that's 2 mana? But you got 3 full signal here. So let's say we play Battlefield Forge rather than Exotic Orchard. Exotic Orchard would be fine unless we're the first player, because then it doesn't tap for anything, because we don't have opponents that have anything that taps for anything. So we Battlefield Forge into Soul Ring, turn 1. Turn 2, we Battlefield Forge and Soul Ring into the 3-fold signal, scry, play our Monastery. You know, we've definitely gotten there, assuming one of our opponents has red or blue, because we have white and green and red here. So if they don't have blue, then we need them to have, well, we got blue here too. Yeah, so we're set. We're totally fine. Anyway, this didn't go as well as when I practiced this before the video record, but generally we're able to get out Omnath on turn 4. If we can't, usually turn 5, and if it's having to happen after turn 5, we usually have a few things in play that will support Omnath beforehand. And with the amount of ramp and the amount of card advantage we have in this deck, Omnath catches up very quickly. Sometimes we even get Omnath out on turn 3. If we, for example, drew 3 different colored lands and an Arcane Signet, or something of that nature, an Obsidian Obelisk, that sort of thing, or a Farseek, if we got a Fellwar Stone to work. with whatever our opponents are playing, a planar Genesis, that sort of deal. So lots of different things that we can get off of this to get our commander out very early. So that about sums it up. Again, I'm going to be making a deck for each of the March of the Machine legends, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific legend or a particular style of that deck, and I will build it for you. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe, and remember, magic is fun. You should play more Magic.